Good Friday afternoon and evening, wherever you may be. How's everybody doing today?
Excellent. It's Friday. How can you feel at the end of Friday? At least it's the end where I live. It's still the
It
beginning
is.
where you are.
It's still just lunchtime where I am, so that's fine. Man, Friday again. Seems like we just did this.
Yeah, it was only 7 days ago since the last time we did it.
I know. By the way, if you're new here right now and you don't know who we are, that's probably normal because you've never been here before. My name is Aaron. This is Victor. We are the co-host of a podcast called DevOps. What are we the co-host of? DevOps Paradox. That's what we are. And that comes out on Wednesdays at 6 a.m. Eastern. And on Fridays, we do this live stream to talk about the things that have gone on during the week. Sometimes for us, sometimes about us, sometimes to us. And this was not one of those weeks, thankfully. And you can ask your questions too. In fact, if you're watching live right now, you can go ahead and say hi over in the chat. I am not in the screen to where I can see that, but now I am. And that's it. This week's episode, by the way, oh, before we do that, get out your drink. It's Friday. Wait, why am I not focusing? There I am. I can't drive today. There we go. I have lime. You have... There we go. There we go. Cheers. Okay. So this week's, there we go. There's Vladislav and there is okay, help me.
Spartacus Tech.
Spartacus?
Sparker.
I want to say
it must be a
Spartacus.
typo. Yeah.
Yeah, well, maybe not. Anyway, hi. Thanks for joining us live today. Today's show is very interesting. Here, let me go ahead and get this going. This week's episode was with Yuval Oren, and it was about the hidden costs of DevOps. There are no hidden costs in DevOps, are there? It's all laid out right in front of us.
Yeah, there are no hidden costs behind anything. Just they're trying to trick us. Technical debt is a myth.
Obviously, there is hidden costs if you're not following us right now. There's lots of hidden costs that sometimes even we don't know. Hidden cost of doing a live stream. The hidden cost is I have to buy a drink every week, right? That's a hidden cost. Something I hadn't budgeted for.
At least it's fun in your case. I need 2 beers, so my costs are double.
Okay. It's a username because I use Spartacus. It was usually used. Yeah, exactly. Spartacus. There we go. All right, cool. So that was a good episode. Hopefully you have had a chance to listen to it. If you haven't, in all your spare time this weekend, go listen to it. There's a lot of interesting information there. And we'll talk about next week's in a few moments. Actually, at the end of the show today. Let's get into the interesting things that we saw this week. And I have to find the right window. There we go. This couldn't be a DevOps thing without first talking about Kelsey Hightower, right? That's just one thing that it used to be Gene Kim, now it's Kelsey Hightower.
Yeah, there is no Kubernetes without Kelsey.
Yeah. And you say Kubernetes is, what is the lifetime of Kubernetes? Now, Kelsey replied to this initial tweet by Aftab. Do you think Kubernetes is going to stay long? If yes, for how long? And blah, blah, blah. And of course, Kelsey goes on to respond, at this point, it's going to be a 20-year play. Would you have thought, now I'm going to pause there for just a second before we continue. Would you have thought mainframe would still be a thing today? And that is now how long of tech? 50 years?
When mainframe started, I'm pretty sure that most people thought that it will be so long because we were not used to such rapid cycles, right, of changing stuff. At the time, probably. But yeah, mainframe will outlive Kubernetes. I can guarantee you that.
Yep. Okay, so we'll come back in here. This is the interesting thing. We're in year 7 of Kubernetes. We're also 10 years into Golang. And some people are still just like, well, what's this new language called Go? It's not a new language. In fact, Java and JavaScript is celebrating their 25th anniversary. 25 years. I have been working with Java since it was released 25 years ago. Yes, I'm that old. But the final part of that sentence is, and it feels like we're just getting started. I'm in complete agreement with that. I believe Kubernetes is just now really getting to version 1. Ish. Or maybe 1.1 or 1.2, right? It's just now getting to that point.
If you would agree for a second, and we can easily disagree there, that Kubernetes is not meant to be used directly, then yes, it is already one or whichever version you want, but we are still missing actually those platforms on top of Kubernetes. It's not that we don't have those platforms, we do, but they are not yet there. So there is still a second phase, creating a platforms on top of Kubernetes, especially that they start differing within each other, not being all the same as they are right now. And then comes the last part of what Kelsey was saying. Then comes removing Kubernetes from being seen, even like Linux kernel.
Yep. Well, it's no different than mainframe. People don't interact with the mainframe; they interact with the UI, whatever that UI is. So right now we're still sort of stuck working directly with Kubernetes in most cases.
I mean, probably similar analogy would be that Kubernetes is in a way similar to hypervisors, right? Initially, we had to deal with hypervisors directly, at least those that are old enough. And now, who knows about hypervisors? Like 0.1% of people, right? You just click a button and you get a virtual machine.
But there's still a hypervisor there.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I thought this was interesting. And again, you can't say DevOps without saying Kelsey. Can you rearrange? He doesn't have a D in his name. I was wondering if you could just rearrange the letters in his name and end up with DevOps somewhere in there, but I don't think so.
No.
Okay, I thought this was a good one. But I think that last sentence again, just to say this, it's that extra layer that's going to make it, Kubernetes doesn't matter, but Kubernetes is actually what's making it happen. That's going to be the key thing. Whoever makes that happen, and really today, if you want to think about it, OpenShift is the closest. Commercially, OpenShift is the closest at least.
I would say that OpenShift is the closest to being a Kubernetes platform, but a layer on top that makes it disappear, I would argue that's not OpenShift, right? It's not making it disappear. That would be Google Cloud Run.
Yes. Which, by the way, thank you for setting me up for that. Min instances finally launched. We knew it was coming, but it wasn't here yet. Now you can set a minimum to whatever you want. We're still waiting on one more feature that they did announce, which was deploy it and it will run basically to wherever it needs to run.
Yeah, you mean across regions and stuff.
Across regions, yeah. That is when that feature launches, that is going to be game changing.
Yeah.
Because if you can get that running now, again, let me ask this question because I don't think I've ever asked you this.
Mm-hmm.
So with Kubernetes, obviously it is an container or it is a container orchestrator. Meaning, if I have containers that I need to orchestrate amongst, I'm going to need Kubernetes.
Correct.
So that means I can't use ACI, Azure Container Instances, to do container orchestration.
No,
high level. Yeah, because it's
ACI is the same as Docker, right? You can use it to run a container,
A single container.
single container in a specific place.
Right. GCR is the same thing, though, right?
No,
It's
no,
not.
GCR will scale, for example, will scale automatically, right? ACI
Right.
doesn't.
Okay, ignoring. Okay, but I'm
basically-
talking about from an orchestration perspective. GCR is the same.
No, because GCR from orchestration perspective is a layer on top of Kubernetes, which orchestrates containers, what's not. ACI is a layer on top of Docker.
Okay.
I mean, maybe they're not using directly Docker, maybe they switch Docker for something else, but
Right.
above a container engine, while GCR is sitting on top of a scheduler.
Right. But I couldn't do. Could I do container orchestration with GCR?
I mean, yes. Yeah.
Technically,
I mean,
yes, right?
It depends what you mean by container orchestration.
If
you
I'm
tell
needing,
Kubernetes.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
So when you use directly Kubernetes, you tell him, hey, I want this application, which happens to be defined as a deployment and what's not, right? And you specify horizontal pod autoscaler, and voila. Kubernetes is going to schedule your pods somewhere within a cluster, wherever that makes most sense.
Right.
Google Cloud Run is doing exactly the same, except that you don't see that Kubernetes cluster. You have no access to it. And that it is based on Knative, so the definition itself is greatly simplified, right?
Right.
So simplified definition of your application running in a Kubernetes that you cannot touch, smell, see, or do anything with it.
Okay.
But I think the easier analogy is that if I would run Knative inside of my Kubernetes cluster, that would be orchestration, right?
Right.
Same thing.
Right. So anyway, let's get back to what we were talking about. The min instances, make sure that you always have a minimum number of instances running. There's pluses and minuses to this, but the primary one is cold start. If your app takes longer than your pain level, then you're probably going to need a minimal. Like if your app takes 15 seconds to start, you're probably going to want a minimum. If your app takes less than 5 milliseconds to start, that's going to be your choice.
It's in most cases, I don't see this as being that big of a deal. And the reason I'm saying that is that either you have significant traffic or you don't, right?
Right.
When you have significant traffic, meaning that there are requests coming more or less all the time, or there is one request at least every couple of minutes, right? That's not even significant. That's really, really low.
Right.
You will always have something running through Google Cloud Run without cold start. It's more important for, I have a whole night where actually nobody's using my application. Why does it would be nice to go to 0, or in this case to 1 replica? But in those cases, usually people are not that worried about how long it takes to start.
Right.
But let's say that I have any of the tools that you normally have for developments, and let's say that you're hosting it yourself and you want to move to Google Cloud Run, and then nobody's working with them whole night, and the first person that comes in the morning, that person will not freak out if it takes 15 seconds, a minute to start it.
Yeah.
Now, if you would be Amazon shopper, then you would be really annoyed with that. But Amazon wouldn't have that problem simply because they have constant traffic.
More than constant traffic, especially this time of year.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So Google Cloud Run, I saw, this isn't in the notes. I saw a blog post, and I'll see if I can find it later. If we have time at the end, I may pull it up. That somebody was testing something out, and they had, in theory, all of their billing set correctly with GCP, but yet it still spiraled to $72,000 in under an hour or two. and
It can happen.
it can happen. So if I can find that later and if we have time, I'll pull it back up.
Ultimately, that happened to me a couple of times. Not that higher of a figure, but compared to what I, as a person, not as my company, can afford, extremely high. And it ultimately got resolved, I think, 3 times. What resolved is me not paying. Normally, cloud providers would write it off at the end.
Yeah. Okay, next up. Our friends behind Flux and the GitOps phrase gets a Series C, 36 million. That's a good thing. It's good for, good for the environment. I thought what was interesting was here are the people that joined this round. So if I highlight it here, there. AWS, first one.
That's not a surprise.
No. What is surprising is that it took them to C to get in.
Yeah, they were customers before, now they're investors.
Yeah. But then you've also got Ericsson, which I think is a big deal, and Orange. The other two are like, whatever. They are important, don't get me wrong, but having AWS as one of your investors can't be a bad thing. I mean, come on, EKS CTL, when that is the recommended way to interact with EKS.
Exactly.
You're doing a good thing.
Amazon is a huge company. I wouldn't be surprised that the cost of doing EKS CTL by themselves would probably be not much lower than the investment they made.
Very true. Just because of the layers of management to get the work done.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think it's good. I know you don't love EKS CTL.
I love it.
Well, you love it from your role and my role as developer advocates, because we know we can get a clean cluster set up and running. I would even still love it as an operator, but I would have to be, the way I approach it would be a little different, but I would still like it versus even what Terraform can give me right now.
I think that I probably didn't, and I know that I spoke about it a lot, probably didn't express myself well. I think EKSCTL is amazing. EKS Cattle is really great. My problem is not with EKS Cattle. My problem is that that's not part of EKS. Kind of, how could Amazon as a company ever release EKS without something like EKS Cattle? Simply, it's supposed to be part of the product. It's something that is in Excel sheet. You need to have those 15 checks before this becomes a product. That is supposed to be one of those 15 checks.
And it just wasn't. I mean, if you've not worked with EKS Cuddle, basically it's creating all the cloud formation that you ever need. And this is the reason why I love EKS Cuddle, because I really dislike cloud formation. It's not my favorite. And it just makes that part simple. But anyway, Weaveworks, congratulations. It's a nice round. Everybody go have a nice dinner on yourself. And that will be good. All right, next up. Hashi released Nomad 1.0. And they met a 2 million container challenge. I saw this. I laughed a little bit until I saw the picture. And
I haven't seen the picture. Show
the picture is down here. So let's look at the subhead. Nomad scheduled 2 million Docker containers on 6,100 hosts in 10 regions in 22 minutes. Now, one of the big selling points of Nomad, as I understand it, and I haven't dug into it a lot, but it treats, one of the things that you don't get today with the big three providers is when you spin up an EKS cluster, it is in a region, period. It doesn't cross regions. Whereas Nomad, in theory, crosses regions. All right, so that's my take on it for the moment. Let me get down to the picture. Okay, linear, blah, blah, blah. This is what I was talking about. And of course, it's really hard. Actually, it's easier for me to see there. Let me blow it up 2 more here. So if Nomad truly was running as a single cluster across these regions, and I don't doubt that that's what was happening. Holy cow.
But, those are like when you have other types of experiments that are very, very controlled.
Yeah.
Take that with a grain of salt.
I agree.
Again, I think that Nomad is great on many different levels, and it might be very beneficial, Nomad, for HashiCorp as a company, given its size and stuff like that. But let's face it, it's not going to overtake Kubernetes.
No.
It will never get significant number of users and what's not. For a simple, something will overtake Kubernetes. Something will take users away from Kubernetes, but that will be not Nomad for a simple reason, because Nomad is doing the same thing. It could be doing it a bit better, a bit worse, but it's not a game changer. Whatever will overtake Kubernetes will be another game changer, just like Kubernetes was a game changer to whatever we had before. Or not Kubernetes, container orchestrators, Kubernetes Swarm, Nomad, Mesos.
Right. But anyway, the thing that I do like about it is that even if they never overtake, which we don't believe they will, Kubernetes, they're showing what can be done. And it'll be interesting to see if anything ends back up in Kubernetes as part of core. Right? To make multi-cluster, multi-region completely seamless. If that's built into core, that could be big for a lot of companies.
Yeah. It will.
Okay.
I sent you much more significant news. It's a few months old.
Okay.
Of HashiCorp Nomad. This one was kind of okay. You schedule containers. Hey,
Okay.
Hashi Nomad helps cannabis industry.
Okay.
That's fresh.
Interesting.
So basically, if anybody is listening here and has tendencies which I cannot mention live, those things might be happening thanks to Nomad.
Next. I could go down another route. I'm not going to. CentOS. What can I say about CentOS? Or what can I say about Red Hat? Actually, I'll say it a different way. I have friends that work for IBM. I have a number of friends that work for IBM. But IBM is doing IBM things to Red Hat right now. There, I said it. If you're not familiar with what's going on here, basically CentOS as we know it is dead. The big thing was CentOS 8 is ending in 2021. They had previously published that CentOS 8 would be supported through 2029, I believe. And now they pulled it back to 2021. If you are running CentOS in any way, shape, or form, which I use Linode for, I've got one Linode instance, and it's CentOS. CentOS 7 to be specific. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do.
Look, this is, and what I'm going to say is not based on some market research data, but CentOS is a free version of Linux stopped being a choice for people a long time ago. Most of the people who run CentOS are just running CentOS as a way to avoid paying Red Hat full amount of money. So they run it in some test environments, let's say, and then it goes to production to Red Hat or something like that. CentOS is used mostly to reduce costs, not as a choice, for a while now.
Correct. But now people are going to be stuck. So you have the one end of the spectrum where it's all the free people, me. You have the other end of the spectrum where they run Red Hat in everything. But then we have that middle section that you just described that is now going to have to make a decision. Do they pay up? Or do they migrate to a different OS?
Yes, but slowly OSs are becoming irrelevant. Right? The speed with which Kubernetes increases is the speed with which you will start caring less and less for operating system. Kind of, I don't know, if you're running right now cluster somewhere, I don't know, in GKE, Amazon, or Azure, I bet you probably don't know what is the operating system.
No. Not unless you're forced to build your own via COPS or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Because of regulatory reasons. And more than likely, you're going to be on Red Hat anyway.
And to clarify, when I say it's not, operating systems are not important, they are important, but not for the end user, right? Somebody needs
Correct.
to think very, very hard what will be the operating system for this or that. But you as a user,
Shouldn't
hey,
care.
Minikube.
Yeah. But if you do have production instances that are on CentOS and you were not aware of this, you've been warned.
Yeah, you try to trick the system, and system is getting back to you.
Speaking of the system getting back, Docker Desktop 3.0.
Yeah.
What's the big pluses and minuses in this? Are there any minuses?
I don't know of any minuses, to be honest. I mean, it's because it's becoming smaller. That's a big plus. That's great. Not really earth-shattering or that exciting. It's more like culmination of, I think that naming it 3.0 is like a culmination of a year worth of effort of doing actually great things.
Yep. And if we take a look at, if you go down to the bottom of this article, they talk about all the things that they did during 2020. And this is a lot. Probably the most they have done in a number of years. Right? Would you think?
I'm not sure that I would say that it's more or bigger than Docker was doing before. It's rather that it's more exciting. Like before, there were Don Quixote type of attitude. We are fighting against the current, right? Swimming against the current. Now they're fine. They found their own way. They're making developer experience improvements. I think that's great. And this is after quite a few years that I would say Docker, a year in a review of Docker, I don't care for any of those things. I actually do like most of those things. I think that they're absolutely fantastic. Dashboard, okay, you know me, but Docker Desktop for new Windows, okay. WSL2 backend, amazing. Kind of that's really great. Azure Container Instances, Amazon ECS, amazing. SNCC, also amazing partnership, and the rest is okay, good, not earth-shattering.
And we didn't call this out here. They have their roadmap published here. So if you want to follow the roadmap, you can. It's still funny though, because they haven't updated the roadmap to get rid of the Edge references. But
yeah, Edge is disappearing, which is very bad news. That means that I need to go and search through all the articles and videos that I was mentioning, enable it.
Did you already write that down?
No, I already have it
Okay.
memorized. I forget in 15 minutes and live happily ever after.
Yeah, so the roadmap is updated 2 hours ago. Let's see what their Kanban board looks like. So investigating, we're writing the code. Okay, that's pretty funny. Almost there. Nothing. And then preview and edge. Support for Docker Desktop on Silicon. For anybody that's bought the new Mac Mini or the M1 chipped based laptops. And then everything that's shipped. I have to admit, oh wait, do I dare do this live? Do I dare do this live?
Yes, but I don't know what you want to do, but yes.
Let's see, can I do it? Do I dare do it?
I don't know what you're trying to do, but yes. Dark, yes.
Dark
baby.
mode. All right. So here, let's do that. There we go. Yeah, dark mode. We did it live. By the way, if you didn't know, GitHub Universal is going on this week. We actually don't have any news about it, but I'm plus and minus on dark modes in general. But as we can see, as we switched over here, we're looking at roadmaps. I noticed this week. Now, reInvent is still going on, even though their news has slowed down quite a bit. They published their roadmap, which I did not know. And this is quite interesting. Again, they sort of follow the model of researching, we're working on it, coming soon. Developer preview, blah, 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 just shipped. But I was curious about what's going on in the coming soon. So Fargate in all regions, blah, 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 FedRAMP compliance. When that one moves from coming soon to just shipped, that's going to be a big deal for all federal customers. And there was one other one that I saw, and I don't remember what it was now. But anyway, those are cool. And then all this. Oh, it was this one. A reliable EKS AMI release process. That actually scared me a little bit when I first read it. And I'm guessing it's because people were baking their own AMIs. And I've had a number of clients that have to bake their own AMIs for whatever reasons. And so if you're on EKS or just in the AWS ecosystem on a regular basis, it probably wouldn't hurt to take a look at this roadmap. Okay. I can tell you're not loving AWS today. Lens.
Actually, I'm working on a couple of things. I'm very focused lately on AWS, and you will see results of that focus probably in a week or two. So there are some things happening with AWS that makes me fall in love with it again.
Are you saying that's going to be?
Coming,
are you saying that's going to be your Christmas present to me?
What, to give you my likeness for AWS as a present?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Very good. I'm generous.
Okay. Lens 4.0 came out. You liked Lens, right? In general? Do you? I've lost track of when you did all the reviews.
No, I didn't like it.
You didn't like Lens?
No.
What was the UI that you did like? There was one UI that
K9S.
No, not K9S. I mean, yes, K9S, but it wasn't that
Cuvius.
One. Cuvius, that's it.
I think that so Lens is probably the best Kubernetes dashboard there is, as long as you don't expect it to be any different than any other dashboard, except, more polished, maybe better looking. But there is no original idea in Lens that I've seen.
Well, but now it may, because it now has, they call it an extensions API. I'm going to call it a plugin ecosystem.
Yes.
And plugins, you have a great love-hate relationship with. Everybody should. Whether it's for Lens or for Kubernetes, sometimes called add-ons. So I think this could be interesting. They can only be developed in TypeScript and packaged as npm. Sigh.
So yes, it could be very interesting, but the thing with plugins, really, the most important thing for plugins of any product is whether you manage to convince half of the industry to actually write the plugin for that product.
Right.
It's more about quantity than mechanism, how you do plugins. That was one of my big complaints about Octant. The biggest advantage of Octant, ignoring now what Lens just released, hey, yeah, you can extend it through plugins to do whatever you want. Yeah, but all 15 plugins that there are publicly available are bad, and don't do anything that I needed to do. Which is not a complaint to Octant plugin mechanism, but rather it didn't pick up.
Right. Now they added in better logging, which again, if you're using K9S, you get this already. That wasn't a big deal. So maybe they're just moving closer towards K9S type things. I don't know. I still think
that UI is enough. I don't want to.
Yeah, I know.
Put pressure.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on from that. Speaking of putting pressure on, Waypoint 2 came out, or 0.20. Let's just be real explicit with this. This still is not 1.0 yet. This is still very early days. But
exactly.
The feature that came with this, I think, is big. It was the next big step. And it's being able to get configs and secrets without having to bury them in the configuration. So typically what you would have done is do something like this. But now you can lift it from, in this case, it was a Kubernetes config. Or if you're working with Vault, so we can grab the theme from Kubernetes. We know what the database, it's only going to be Postgres. But now from Vault, we can get the username and password. This was something that was missing, and fine, it was 0.10. This is a great next building block.
And it's quite original. I don't know of many, or if any, tools that do something like that, like the Kubernetes part. Hey, actually, I already have that information I need in Kubernetes. Why don't I tell the tool that I'm using to do stuff how to fetch it from Kubernetes?
Yeah.
Surprisingly, not many do that, right? We all still kind of keeping them in some hidden files in our laptops.
Yep, I like that. And then they did some more templating and kind of stuff like that. I would guess just building off of their standard processing of how they deal with templating in Terraform. It smells very much the same as the same.
Yeah, it is Terraform for deployments, ultimately.
Yeah, it is. And then they also have a couple of other new features, but nothing huge. And then in the what's next, they also have a roadmap, which I haven't looked at that. Let's go over there for a moment, just because we can. Oh, yay. Okay. Lots of bugs. Okay, that's not what I was wanting to find. Let's see if they have. Nope, they don't have it that way either. They're doing milestones. There we go. Oh, so they haven't actually published the next milestone yet. So, there you go. But anyway, Waypoint, I'm still wanting to do something with it. I just haven't come up with it exactly what I want to do yet. And of course, you've already done something because that's just what you do. You make the simple things even simpler. Sometimes I make the simple things hard. Speaking of simple things hard, huh?
I think that Waypoint is very uninteresting product right now. Not
Right now.
that it will be. I don't think it actually, I would not really encourage anybody to use Waypoint. What I would encourage is software providers to jump into Waypoint. And if it becomes equivalent to Terraform, and the strength of Terraform is really in its ecosystem of plugins, not Terraform itself. Don't take me wrong, Terraform is great. But what makes it amazing is the support from vendors for Terraform and community. That's the milestone that is really missing there. Of course, there are things like what we just saw in this release that are missing, and they're working on it, and I'm pretty sure that Hashi is going to continue working on it. But we need bigger support to do really useful stuff before that becomes useful from non-Hashi companies.
Yep. Speaking of useful, you've heard Docker's going away from Kubernetes, right? If you haven't, Docker actually isn't leaving Kubernetes. Let's get it right. Docker shim is leaving Kubernetes.
Yeah. So Docker is not. So let's put it this way: Docker is not leaving Kubernetes willingly.
Yes.
Kind of like,
it's being kicked out. Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of like, yeah, you can still be in this apartment. I'm just gonna take away your key, and I'm gonna cut your phone line as well, so that nobody can speak with you. So if you wanna stay, yeah, go ahead. But I've been, to be honest, I've been surprised in a negative sense that I received quite a few messages after publishing this of people asking me how to continue using Docker. I completely failed in some cases to pass the message. And the message is, you were not supposed to rely on Docker specific anything for years already. You did. Now you're forced to do it because you're supposed to communicate with Kubernetes API, not do some Docker commands with sockets, privileged modes, and all that horrible things. And cool. Kind of that makes sense to me as a message. And then, so if I switch to Containerd, can I run Docker in parallel? Yes, you can. Please don't. If I do this, can I do that? So people are some are struggling by going in a wrong direction. Kind of, how can we prevent these things from making us change what we're doing? And that's very bad, I think.
It is. By the way, this was the video that Victor released this week. All the link to this YouTube and all the other places we've been today will be down in the description or down in the show notes. If people are kicking the can down the road, and if their infrastructure people are doing the right thing, and 120 is installed in 9 months, maybe 12 months.
120 released or installed?
No, installed. So 120 can be, I mean, obviously you could get, no, you can't even get 120 right now. But
no, it's going to be released in no time. It's coming,
right.
But it's the next release.
Right. And that's what I'm saying is most of the cloud providers, you've still got, 15 is still the lowest number for most cloud providers. 16 is, I think. 15,
Careful
16.
with that.
Okay.
That's if you look at it from deprecation notice perspective. But we saw, I think that a couple of weeks ago, we were commenting on Azure defaulting to Docker. Defaulting to Containerd, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, yes, you can still create AKS clusters based on Docker.
Yes.
but it's not a default anymore. So
Right.
signs are there. Google also announced, I think maybe a week ago, something like that. I missed. Yeah, I should have put it in notes. But they're also switching. I don't think that they're even defaulting, but new releases of GKE will be based on Containerd exclusively, I believe. So it's not only. I think that the way how I interpret this is that major vendors were planning for a long time to switch to Containerd or Cry or something like that. They were not doing that because it would result in outcry from their users. Kind of, oh, you're removing Docker from my distribution. So it was there waiting, no? And the moment everybody knew that Kubernetes is going to announce what they are going to announce, or after they announced it, kind of all those plans that were building during years are now, okay, so here you go, everybody's announcing the same. And those announcements are not coming as a result of Kubernetes deprecating it, but more that they were already pre-prepared for a long time. And now, hey, now we're not afraid to actually do it.
It's sort of like the person that broke the 4-minute mile. It took one person to do it, and then everybody else followed.
Exactly.
So maybe Azure was the first one to knock over that first domino.
Yes, and the reason for deprecation is probably the least important reason for not using Docker, right? Kubernetes community is deprecating Docker shim because it's an overhead, maintenance overhead, kind of why we don't want to maintain this anymore. And that's probably the least valid reason to do that, right? The real reasons are, hey, it's insecure, you're doing silly stuff, you are bypassing Kubernetes API, blah, blah, blah. But there are many good reasons why that should be. Maintenance is probably the least good reason, but it's good that it came. So kind of it forced the hand.
Yep. But anyway, if you're building images, and you have to change the phrasing on this. We actually did a recording this week, and the gentleman was saying Docker images. It's like, no, container it's not an image. It's a container image. That's all.
Exactly.
It is. It's a container image that has a definition that is a Docker file. That is a file named Docker file. It is hard.
It's very hard to. The same thing is if tomorrow something, we say Google it, we don't say search it, right? It's very hard to change that. I was practicing, I was forcing myself to start saying a while ago container images instead of Docker images. It's hard to get that out of our brain, but it's not Docker images. No. You're just using Docker to build OCI or Open Container Interface images.
Yep. By the way, if you have any questions that will go beyond today, and you haven't joined the Slack channel yet, or Slack Workspace, go ahead and do that. It's scrolling right down over there by under Victor. DevOpsParadox.com/Slack. And we're still waiting to see what happens after the deal closes with Salesforce, if we're still on Slack or not. We should be. You're muted.
We will, of course we will. I mean, they reached the point that they need the backing to sell to enterprises. That's the only thing that will change drastically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
SKUs.
To me, that sounds very similar to that panic that happened when it was announced that that Microsoft is buying GitHub. And everybody was, oh, what should I do now? Shall I move all my repos? Microsoft is going, no, not. I mean, I cannot guarantee that Salesforce is not going to do some nasty stuff. But this is a move focused on enterprise purchases of Slack.
If you look at the larger acquisitions that Salesforce has done, Heroku, MuleSoft, there's others, I'm drawing a blank, Have you seen those change a whole lot from our perspective? I haven't. Not for the good or for the bad, right? They still seem to be just the way they were.
Yeah, except that both MuleSoft and Heroku and Slack are the same in one thing and very different in another. They're the same in sense that neither of the three managed to penetrate enterprises compared to their competition. So I'm not saying that Slack is not selling to enterprises, it is, but compared to Microsoft Teams, it's not going good. Now, there is a significant difference between the three, and that's that Slack is still very high on a rise, at least from the usage perspective, from individuals, if not companies. While Heroku was going down already when they bought it, and Salesforce really did not manage to save Heroku. I mean, when I say save, to turn the tide around and make it go whoop again, right? Didn't.
Yeah.
And same thing with MuleSoft. What is MuleSoft? Nobody knows anymore, right?
Okay. And I forgot to go through and figure out where we were this week. I think I did one live stream. I've got another live stream coming up right after we finish today here. And then I'm done with live streams. Then I have to go back and start writing again. Writing is hard. Writing words is hard.
Oh, yeah. Because kind of,
give me a camera, give me a microphone, I'm good. Right.
Because it sounds much better when you don't say things well, when you make mistakes, that all sounds so much better as audio than written, right? At least maybe that's me, but I notice kind of wrong punctuation or commas missing in written form. Subconsciously, if not consciously, it bothers me, right? But when somebody's speaking, then, hey, you can even listen to me. Kind of like I have horrible accent, and I make huge mistakes with grammar, and kind of I'm bearable when I listen. But if you would try, here's a challenge. Darren, make public any of the transcripts without changing them.
I can do that.
And if you can stand reading it for more than 2 minutes, you get a prize.
I'll post it. Here, let me write that down because I'll forget. Post raw transcript. Okay. So I'll post a raw transcript. Go join up in the Slack workspace. Go to the podcast channel. There will be a link at some point, probably this weekend. This weekend being the weekend of December 11th, 12th, 13th, somewhere in there, of a raw transcript. And you will quickly see how much editing I do in an episode. Not only on Victor, but on myself. I'm ruthless when it comes to the podcast. Well, and if you're listening to the podcast, I want to be, I want to make sure that you're getting good quality. It's not abnormal for me to cut 7 to 10 minutes out of a 30-minute episode, 40-minute episode, which gets it down to about 30. I don't want to waste your time. Those 7 or 10 minutes, you could be watching Tiger King on Netflix.
And probably of those 7 to 10 minutes, 80% is cutting me.
Probably, yeah. Because you usually talk more than me anyway. So I'm just quiet. Just make sure. I'm just getting everything set up for you so you can just say, okay, here you go. And off you go. Okay. We're getting close to Christmas. We are actually, do you realize this? We are 14 days from Christmas Day.
I know, I realize it very well because it's been expensive already for me. I have a daughter. That means that the closer we get to Christmas, more money I need to spend on random stuff that will be used on average for 15 minutes.
So, and the reason why I'm bringing this up, and we haven't talked about this, are we going to take Christmas Day off?
I don't know anymore which day is off because I'm having a hard time even distinguishing what is kind of like office hours, what is outside office hours. I have no idea.
And I don't even know. I might go up and see my mom that day, so I literally may not be able to. So hopefully by next week I'll know. But it just doesn't seem like Christmas. I mean, normally where I live, it's normally, I don't know, 5 to 10 Celsius this time of year. It's now probably closer to 20, so it's really nice. But it's supposed to get, winter is coming, like next week. But we don't get snow here, we just get cold. So it's supposed to be like -5 to +5. That's supposed to be the range all next week. That's chilly. It's not cold, that's chilly. And I'm probably messing up the math in my head because I don't do Celsius, I do Fahrenheit. But I think I'm close.
It's a below or above freezing
Yeah,
point. That's easy.
yeah. It's basically we're getting down to 20 Fahrenheit every night. So, but that's okay. It's December in the northern hemisphere. That's what's supposed to happen.
No, what is supposed to happen is for me to go for Christmas south to some warm country. That's what's supposed to happen, but it's COVID year, so it's not happening.
Where would you typically go? We've never had this conversation. Where would you go?
Africa, Thailand, Australia. Australia is next on the list. Anywhere below the equator.
Okay, so go southern hemisphere too. Okay, interesting.
Well, I'm like birds. I hate cold, right? Kind of like, oh, cold is coming, I go south. Cold is going away, I'm coming back.
That's strange and sad all at the same time.
We have a brilliant idea, actually, family idea. This is completely unrelated with everything. Kind of, those 3 months in summer when school is off and child is not in school. Kind of, as we are all working remotely now, and when assuming that by summer COVID passes, just kind of like do house exchange with somebody for 3 months and be, I don't know, in Australia.
Yep.
Kind
just
of
do a one for one swap. Yeah, just say boop.
Exactly. That work-wise, it's not going to be affected, right? Kind of, I'm still going to do the same thing.
Not
I just need to carry the mic for you guys.
You carry the microphone. The only thing, though, would be if we're actually traveling again at that point. Could we be traveling in July?
We will be traveling, but I don't think that for most people, the travel is never going to go back to where it was.
No.
I cannot imagine everything going back to where it was before COVID. There will not be the same amount of conferences. There will be higher percentage of customers equally comfortable with speaking remotely as face to face and stuff like that. I don't think that at least for you and me, Darin, I don't think that we're returning to the same amount of travels. Not because we don't want to, but it's simply business. From business perspective, it's not going to be
not required.
That interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
And also, those companies, that became greatly remote. Let's say that you want to go and then be every week with the company in their offices. But many of those companies are going to stay partly remote, if not fully. So where are you going to go? Door to door. From 10 to 11, I'm going to your house, and 11 to 12 to your house, and 12 to 1 to your house. No.
Yeah, there's a guy that I follow that is doing a conference. It's a business conference in February. So basically 2 months from now. And I was like, oh, cool. And it turns out he's doing it at a place that's literally 1.5 miles from my house. I went, okay, that's cool, but that also means I still get to stay at my house. That's a plus and a minus. Right? I'd save on money, but I was hoping to go somewhere. But that's okay. All right. Why don't we call it for a day? Again, if you haven't joined up in the Slack workspace, please do that. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, right underneath Victor is the big red subscribe button. Click on that. Click on that bell. and you will be notified anytime we schedule live streams, which we normally do about a day out because we don't know our schedules. And actually, we semi-know our schedules, but they change a lot. That's the downside of being home all the time. It's like playing...
Sometime Friday.
Yes, usually sometime Friday. And again, subscribe to the podcast if you haven't done that. And thanks for joining us live today. If you're watching this on the replay, thanks for hanging out with us. And maybe you watched it at 2x, and now you're listening to this and going, okay, where's the transcript? I might actually run this one through the transcript. I may actually just transcribe this. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to transcribe today's episode, which means it'll be tomorrow before it comes out because I can't do it. Well, I'll see. It'll probably be this weekend. I'm going to transcribe this episode, and I'll put it underneath as is, completely raw. And sometimes when I say completely raw, the language can be completely raw. It's bad. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out, and we will talk to you again next week.